Hi, friends. Welcome to Embracing Your Season. I'm your host, Paige Clingenpeel. As a reminder, you can listen to the show on all major podcast platforms. If you do happen to listen on Apple Podcasts, which PS is my favorite, we would so appreciate it if you would give the show a rate and review. You can also follow us. That way you never miss an episode because new episodes are released every Tuesday. So you definitely want to check that out. We also have the Homeward YouTube channel, so you could see our pretty faces. How cool would that be? So check us out there as well. And make sure you hit up the homeward.com website because there's tons of things and resources available to you to equip you in your marriage and your families. Prior to us getting started with this wonderful conversation with our guest, Tara Sun, I want to welcome on Mike Segovia, the one, the only producer of Embracing Your Season. Mike, love that you're here.
Love that I'm here as well, Paige. I realized I haven't talked to you since like before 4th of July. So how was your 4th of July weekend and celebration and all that good
Well, it was
stuff?
good. Well, I have a lot of burns. I mean, there are
Uh-oh.
parts of my body, and women know this. We understand. Like wintertime, we are fully covered. And then
Uh,
summer, all of a sudden, like the tops of your shoulders and the tops of your thighs, which have not seen the sunlight for like a decade, they get slightly burned, even with sunscreen. So
oh man.
I'm better now. I am better. Thank you for asking.
No, absolutely. Yeah. We had a great time. We went out to Missouri to visit my son and my daughter came. We bought the dogs and
Oh, so fun.
we rented a lake house at the Lake of the Ozarks. And I was so freaked out and worried about the mosquitoes ahead of time. I mean, they like dominated inside of my head, but I only got bit
Oh,
twice. And so for
okay.
those of you on the
Bonus.
YouTube channel, there's few little snips.
Yeah.
So mosquitoes
Nice.
too, Mike, nothing. But you know, I survived. But it was crazy, Paige,
Yeah.
beforehand because, when I take off and go on a vacation like that, I have my own business, producing podcasts and such. Man, we
Mhm.
really have to get ahead. So my team was cranking ahead, I was cranking ahead, and I didn't want to like get into their world because I knew they only had so much capacity themselves getting
Yeah.
ready, for their own 4th of July celebration. So I'm thinking to myself, capacity versus boundaries. How much do I give them? If they say no, am I good? If people come to me and say no, or Mike, can
Mm.
you do this before you leave? Can I or not? And so I was kind of going back and forth about, thinking about the capacity and the boundaries. And have you ever had to deal with that, Page?
Oh my gosh. I think that's like my mantra. It's like I understand that I am capable. Like I have a high capacity to do a
Oh,
lot. I
yes, you
mean,
do.
when you look on paper, it's crazy. When I go through the things that I do, whether it's an adjunct or it's podcast or it's full-time job plus 4 kids, like it's so much. But in my mind, I'm like, but it's all things that like fill my bucket.
Hmm.
But the problem is that there are moments when I look at other people that I'm coworkers with, for instance, and they're so good at setting up those boundaries of making sure they're not doing something every night or making sure that they've established routines with their families that I'm like, whoa, maybe I need to take that into consideration. So it's this tension back and forth of, am I overcommitting? Am I overindulging in these activities that feel good, but maybe aren't the best? Yes.
Mm.
And so this is why we have Miss Tara Sun on the show today. Let me tell you a little bit about her because she's actually coming out with a book, which is really going to answer some of these questions for people. So Tara is a writer and a speaker and the host of Truth Talks with Tara, which I love that phrase or that title, by the way. I love that because anytime anybody can tell me truth and hit the authentic subjects, I'm like, yes, tell me, fill me up. So she's the author of Surrender Your Story and the upcoming book, Overbooked and Overwhelmed. Anyone else relate to that title?
Mm.
That book releases on August 5th. It is a hopeful and practical guide for readers who want to be fully present with God, but are over busy, over notified, which I can relate with, and overwhelmed. So, through biblical truth and personal stories, Tara helps women put distractions in their place and find the soul deep rest that they long for. And so I'm so excited to have this conversation with Tara. And make sure you check out on our show notes where you can find this book, pre-order it, check out her podcast, because these are topics and subjects we all struggle with, don't we, friends? And so I'm glad that she's on the show today. So help me welcome now on this edition of Embracing Your Season, Tara Sun. Tara, I'm so excited that you're joining me here today. Thanks for joining Embracing Your Season podcast.
Oh, thanks so much, Paige. You are so animated, such a joy. I am really excited to get into this today.
Well, girl, your book that is coming out on August 5th, like this is things that I need to soak deep into my soul. It's the Overbooked and Overwhelmed. Tell me a little bit about why you felt compelled to write this.
It was honestly not a message I ever thought I would write. It's funny because my first book, Surrender Your Story, is all about being a control freak, which I kind of thought like that kind of scratched that itch, right? Of like wanting to do it all, be it all. I'm like, okay, Lord, you did that through me. But this was really, truly never a book I thought I would write. And because I'd never thought that, the Lord kinda surprised me. I
Mhm.
was inspired to write this because I had a literal, like, breakdown, a moment of burnout, and not just physical. I think most of us can relate to the physical burnout of just being really tired, just
Mhm.
overstimulated, like, you have to take a sabbatical, like, you just really come to the end of it, whether it's in work, it's usually used a lot to describe a burnout from work or a lack of a work-life balance, but
Yeah,
for me,
sure.
that burnout and breakdown, yeah, it came through mental, emotional, physical, but also spiritual, where I had been running at such an unsustainable pace in my life for so long. I was chasing achievement. I was a new mom. I was busier than life had ever been. And confronted with all that responsibility, instead of being like, Lord, I need you, I was like, just nose to the grindstone. Like I felt like a lot of us do, slated with a lot of good responsibility, right? People to serve. I genuinely wanted to make a difference for the kingdom, right? And I needed to show up in different areas, but I didn't know how to like juggle all that. So what went to the wayside? That was my relationship with God. Which saying
Mhm.
that sounds like, Tara, I don't know how you could have possibly done that. That's like the central thing to your life as a Christian. But I think all of us can relate to like so many other things often feel more pressing than spending time with Jesus. And so he starts to kind of take the back seat. And then I started to realize, wow, where is God in all of this? And because of that, I really graciously let me kind of come to the spot where I'm like, "Oh wait, we need to reevaluate. Something's wrong. Something's very deeply wrong." So that's where
Mhm.
this came from.
I can totally relate to the nuances of choosing other things before Jesus. Like I
Yeah.
spend time in the morning before I even, well, I get out of bed to get coffee. So I can't say that
Yeah.
before I get out of bed, but
Yeah.
my devotionals are on my phone. I'm reading the Bible in a year. And so it is
Yeah.
dictated by the phone, which is so awesome because it keeps tabs of where I'm at, all of that. But what
Yeah.
I tend to do then is that I go and check my email and then I check my
Yep.
text and then I segue to Facebook and then like Instagram and then I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, man, I only have, like, 15 minutes left. Let me hurry up and read this book of Kings," And it's like,
Sure.
"What has happened to me?" And so I think women get well, parents in general get into
Yes.
that pattern, and so how can you help women I mean, encourage the distractions sometimes, but social media has become that connectivity, port for us in relationships, but I think it's sucking life away. Like, do you wanna speak to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's really easy for us to go on, kind of like this pendulum swing of like, oh, social media is the devil, or oh, social media is an
Mhm.
incredible tool, which I kind of feel like, depending on how we use it, I mean, we can find, I don't like the word balance, but I really truly think we can, where it can be a connection port, but we also have to hold it and steward it in a really careful way because it
Yeah.
really can take away our ability to be present. I mean, scientific studies are even telling us that it is rewiring our brains.
Yes,
I
girl.
Yeah, I quote
It's
in the
crazy.
book, it's really wild. I mean, on one hand, I can't blame us. On the other hand, I'm like, we got to take our power back, like the sound mind
Mhm.
that Jesus promises us. I quote in one of the chapters in the book early on that there's a study done by Netflix executives were included in this study where they say, that there are, I don't even remember the percentage of people or how long. I'll have to go back and read it in my own book. But just that there is a massive amount of people that when they sit down to open Netflix, they will binge an entire series or
Mm.
hours on end. It's a staggering amount of people. And then some people say that like our attention spans are getting bigger, some are smaller. These Netflix executives disagree and saying that people are actually locking in for hours at a time. And so it's this really interesting thing that we have to weigh, that social media is a part of our world, but how do we not let it become the biggest part of our world? I think a lot of us say, I want to be more present with my kids. A lot of us want to be more present with our spouses at the dinner table. And then we're like, why is it that not happening? Why is that actually, why aren't we feeling closer to people? And it's like, well, how much are we scrolling? Those
Mm.
moments that we're even sitting there nursing your babies, waiting in the carpool line, like getting
Mhm.
ready for bed, like whatever those things are, is that always being filled by something that's distracting us. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we think distraction is not really a big thing, but it actually adds up over time, and I've seen that in my life.
Oh man, that's so good. And I was even thinking through like our exposure to information has been exponentially poured over us repeatedly, whether
Mm.
it's news and TV, and then obviously the technology that we have in our hands now. And so the fact that we need a brain break, but we're choosing things that
Yeah.
actually increase the stimulation. So you're talking
Right.
through just like the scientific evidence. Like I speak to this a lot. My TEDx talk was about this, about the brain
Mm.
development. And it is actually like we're decreasing our ability to focus well. And what Netflix and TV and all these medias are finding out is that they have to keep our attention by changing the sound levels or changing the movement
Yes.
that's on the screen. So they're
Yeah.
accommodating this need for stimulus. And so that's maybe why kids and adults alike are on Netflix for so long, but it's because they've manipulated the input that is happening in our bodies and
Right.
brains. So now
Right.
when we finally have an ability to sit down and play with our kids, that's not stimulating our brain enough. We almost need
Yeah.
something else happening. And so we are actually falling into the trap of like, this is a good brain break, but in reality, it's actually increasing it moving forward, which that's
Right.
terrifying. Like raising kids in
Yeah.
this world. And again, we're the first generation that have had phones in our hands,
Yeah.
technology in our hands. So we're still trying to figure this out. Science is still catching up to how is this implemented into the day-to-day parenting. But it's this reality that how did God make us? That's the core question. And I think you're addressing that in your book is
Yeah.
how can we meet God where he's at, not where we're at? And so what are some
Right.
suggestions for those parents out there struggling with this ability to meet God where they're at?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I used to think before I became a mom, and I have a 3-year-old and a little over 3-year-old, and then I have a 6-month-old. And so I'm very much in the little years. And I used to have, an hour, sometimes plus, to spend time with the Lord, like just
Mm.
unhindered, like
Mhm.
absolute quiet time, right? Like markers out, coffee hot, no noise. And, it was quiet time. And that's just not the reality anymore. Even if I get up early in the morning, there are some pressing things to do. And I wanna say that to parents listening, to people listening, that this message is not one of you have to live like a monk and throw your phone away and life has to be serene, right? In order for you
Yeah.
to keep up with God when you're just trying to keep up with life. Like, the reality is that the overwhelm of life is never going to go away, but what we need to do is lay the groundwork to be able to steady us when life does get overwhelming so that we can stay present with God. And so I think to the parent listening, thinking, I want to do this. I want to be more present. I want to be less overwhelmed in all of this. One thing that has really changed me in my time with the Lord is just repurposing the moments that I have, right? Because I used to think
That's
I have to
good.
have time away from my kids to spend time in the word. And now I'm like, you know what? If we have a slow morning and I haven't touched my Bible before the boys got up, I'm gonna open my Bible in front of them. My toddler's gonna wanna color on my Bible, and I'm gonna have to fight him a little bit on that or let him color a little bit on my Bible. But, opening that up and getting in the Word, even if it's meditating on a verse or 2, listening to an audio Bible while I drive, while I cook, while I clean, the things that you have to do in a day. Like, we just can't check out of those responsibilities. And so I
Mm.
just think repurposing your moments. My dad says these whisper prayers, like opening a conversation the moment you wake up in the morning. Think about like dialing the phone to reach God and say, "Hey God, good morning. We're going to start a new day, new morning, new mercies." And then go about your day. Something's hard, pray. You got a prayer
It's
answered,
good.
thank the Lord for it. Like just these whisper prayers throughout your day. I think we have really done ourselves a disservice by limiting God to one stationary moment in our day. And as a mom, especially a mom on the go, I have found so much freedom in that and finding him in the margins. And when you do that, and when you don't just box him into one day or one chair in your living room for an hour, you get to see that he's actually everywhere. And that's when
Mm.
you get to experience his presence, which is a huge thing we talk about in the book too, that he's always with us, but how present are we with him in our moments?
Wow, that is so good. Like repurposing your time, finding
Yeah.
him in the margin. And you're right. How often that we try to categorize it into, I can only have devotional moments in the morning, pre
Yeah.
whatever it is. The rest of the
Right.
day is wide open for those
Yeah.
opportunities. And the Lord tells us, let's rejoice always, let's pray continually. And
Yeah.
it's not that consistent. Like you pray for 15, 20, 30 minutes. Maybe it's more of, Lord, give me strength right now. My toddler is throwing a tantrum and
Yeah.
I am at my wit's end. That
Yeah.
is connected with the Lord. And so I do love that. But speaking
Right.
a little bit about just like the modeling that you're doing for your kiddos now, even though that they're little, I know
Yeah.
my kids see this growing up as well. But fascinatingly enough, I had a mom that worked so hard. She worked full time. She carpooled. She came home and
Mm.
cooked. And then she would do the constant like gardening or crafts or other things. And so this was modeled for me. And I know that you use the analogy in your book, The Martha and Mary, which I've
Yeah.
joked with my mom always. I was like, girl, you got to slow down. Like you have to be the Mary sometimes. But then it hits me in the face. Hold
Yeah.
on. I am super active. I
Yeah.
am doing the same thing. And so
Yeah.
how can you or speak to a little bit about just the generational modeling that we have a chance
Mm.
to break this up and change it for the next generation?
Oh, absolutely. I feel it so deeply in my bones. And I know it's not like it's for our boys, it's also for our girls, but I think especially having boys, I think about how I want to model a woman that they want to marry someday and how we've my husband and I have the most incredible parents. But just like any parents, we think, okay, like we've learned things we want to do the same. We've learned things we want to do differently. And
Mhm.
I've just been really, really convicted by, like you said, that Martha and Mary aspect of like, I think Martha gets a bad rap. Jesus
Yeah,
never once tells her that the things that she cares about shouldn't be cared about. But he
that's right.
says, you know what, you're stressing and anxious about the wrong things. If you only did what Mary did, which means focus on the eternal, the external, the temporary things that you're worried about will be taken care of. And so I think
Yeah.
this idea of just being this first generation of having these kids and these in this overconnected world, I think it is showing them like I obviously like I personally and my husband like we really want to be present with our kids, meaning we don't want to be glued to our phones, but we
Mhm.
also want to show them like the healthy boundaries around it. Like we want to show them like how we like have our phones out but we also still focus on them, how we can handle this correctly, because I think going to one extreme is not helpful, right, or to the other. So showing them that, I even just think in the general way that we live our life and the overwhelm in our calendars, like we want to show our kids what it looks like to steward it well, to serve people, but also to give time for yourself. I think generations before me have never really known what it means to like give yourself rest and give yourself time. I think there's generations that are like, you know what, you just got to work until you die. I mean, you've heard
Mm.
that. Like that is something that I think my dad's generation or the generation before has said, but I just think that can be unhealthy. And so breaking some of
Yeah.
those and just showing them like this is what God's rest looks like. And you can still work really hard. You're still going to have seasons of overwhelm and it's going to be crazy. But like, how can you have rhythms in the midst of that? I think, can be really life-giving. Again, I only have a three-year-old and a six-month-old, but I'm even thinking about it now.
Yep, exactly. And that's the things I'm thinking through. My kids are older. I have 4 teenagers,
Yeah.
different stage, one going to college and the youngest is going to middle school. But it seems oftentimes that our calendar is dictated by their activities. And this
Mm,
is where I try to figure out how do I balance this? But I love the
yeah,
word that you use of like stewardship,
yeah,
teaching them stewardship of their
yeah,
opportunities or even their friendships. But I think my dilemma is especially because we're a sports oriented family and that
yeah,
the coaches set the schedules,
yeah.
and this is where it's like, how do we have these conversations at home where we want them to steward
Mm.
well, but it's also dictated by other people outside of our family? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if this is the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know if this has to do with what you just asked, but I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, we'll go there.
I was listening to a podcast and the host said something like she has, I think 3 or 4 boys. They're all adults, like they're in their 30s, they have their own kids now. And she said that they said right off of the bat that they made it very clear that they were not the people that run the home, that,
Mm,
they are a part of a family, right? So
yeah.
they get to fold into it's obviously doesn't center around mom and dad either. It centers around God and what he wants for the family, but that they will meld into a family unit. And so
Mm,
we have to do what is in the best interest of every single member of the family. I think one thing, like you said, just with bending kind of to the will of coaches and other people, I think it's looking at every, like, I would imagine, at least from my point of view right now, is just looking at the needs of every single kid and seeing,
Mhm.
like, what time does this draw for this one and the distance to drive to this one, and, like, how can we honor everyone in that? And just seeing, like, I think it's really seasonal because, like, even right now having little kids, like, we're not in that season, but there's certain things that my 3-year-old needs that, is different from my 6-month-old or vice versa, and I have to look at, like, can we do that within our limits and with our limitations. And I say that in the book that these limitations can actually be liberating. It actually
Mm.
shows us like where we can be intentional with our time and honor the Lord. And so I would really think about that, like everyone's individual needs, and then like can in turn, like you do need to be respectful to coaches and to other people, and when you say you're going to do something, to give them that commitment. But I
Yeah.
think it's really helpful to look at everyone's schedules and their needs and how it all fits into the bigger picture of the family.
I love that. And that resonates with me. I mean, some of the things that one child particularly gets more opportunities because his talent level is in
Mhm.
that, but we could still choose not to engage. And the reality is, friends, like my child is most likely not going to be a professional soccer player. Will he go and play in college? Let's hope so. I'm praying for scholarships, friends. If you want to
Yes.
add your prayers to that, that'd be great. But like he's not going professionally. And so
Mm.
even though he gets these amazing opportunities, it doesn't mean that we have to engage in all of them. And I think
Yes.
that's where
Yeah.
parents need to take the step back and be like, what's the bigger picture here? And I know that then I struggle with some of that guilt and shame that can come alongside of I'm not taking advantage of the opportunities or I'm
Mhm.
focusing on one child too much. Can you speak a little bit about like misplaced priorities and the shame and guilt that can kind of come alongside those?
Oh, that's so good. So one of the first things that I say right off the bat in the book is like it's so easy to slip into guilt and shame thinking like, "Oh, I
Mhm.
haven't kept Jesus first," or maybe I've been a very strung out, anxious, snappy, impatient mom, and you take on all this guilt and this shame because of past actions and misplaced priorities. I find a lot of hope in knowing that they're like that children, even when they're a little bit older, of course, I don't have teenagers, but I just even hearing from my parents who have raised my brother and I, and we're not now into our mid to late 20s and have our own kids, like I just have found so much hope from them knowing that like they're like, "You know what? These kids are very flexible," you know?
Yeah.
And like I think there's a lot of hope in that. I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to perfect it, and oh, I messed up, then oh, my 3-year-old, he's going to be off the path for the rest of his life if I'm like this. But I say in the book that God does not ask us to have it all cleaned up and have our priorities in order before we come to Him. I think
That's
it's
good.
really easy to be like, especially as a parent, you're exhausted from holding it all together, working, staying at home, whatever you're doing, and taking care of your kids. And just think that you have to come to Jesus with all of the energy in the world
Mhm.
to do this change and to fix the guilt and the shame. But like we learned from the prodigal son, like we learned from scripture, that even if it's one stumble, even if you're coming covered in pig slop, just like the prodigal son, that God takes a million steps towards you. He celebrates, just like that father. He didn't just invite his son back in. He's like, let's throw a party. let's
Yes,
let's
so
start
good.
over. Let's do it again. And I find a lot of hope in that.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, speaking to the parents out there that maybe want to get back into making wise choices with the stewardship of their time, but they're kind of dry just spiritually, where would you suggest they start, or how do they start implementing baby steps into their rhythms?
Baby steps are huge. This is so good.
Mhm.
One of my favorite chapters in the book is called "A Word for the Weary," and I'm just gonna be honest. I personally am feeling weary right now, just in a busy
Mm.
season of life and work and little boys and all the things. And you always think summer's gonna be chill, but it's not. It's like
It
the
never
opposite,
is. It's like a shock
right?
every year. Yeah.
Why do we not learn? And no, it's so funny. But yeah, so I'm feeling particularly weary right now, and I'm feeling like, Lord, I don't know how to give you any more time. My soul feels dry. Like I'm pouring out for everyone else. My spiritual walk feels dry at times. And sort of the
Mhm.
person there's the parable of the sower where it talks about the one choked out by the cares. So the pleasures of the world, even the good things, the distractions, they're choked out by life. And so what's the antidote? Is to think about our soil, is to think about what we're putting into our lives and what we're actually consuming, and those baby steps. Also in the book we talk about these small steps of faithfulness, knowing that God is first faithful to us and committed to us, and so we can do that by taking these little steps. And I think practically I would encourage the parent to invite your kids into it, to I mean, honestly, be real with where you're at because honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say that your season of intensity and busyness is going to disappear because often that's just not how life works and that's not how God works. Because just like the man who built his house on the rock, the wind still came, even when
That's
he had
right.
a strong foundation, right?
Yep.
I would just say, though, to invite your kids into it, to be real, to just share like where you're at, depending on their age. And just to read scripture and to not feel like you have to put these expectations of putting on a church service at home for your kids,
Mhm.
but to tend to yourself too. And even if that is saying no to some things, to refill yourself, knowing that you are the leader of your home. You are also not just accountable to your kids, but you're accountable to God. And so
Yeah.
you are worthy of taking that time to be still, to reorient and reconnect with God. I mean, I say this in the book that rest is really a reorientation and a revival in Jesus Christ. And if we're not doing that, there's no wonder that we're weary. And so just
Mhm.
like taking that time to do that, I think the more we do that, the more it'll be a rhythm that we look forward into our life. Because the longer we run at this crazy pace, of course, it's going to be harder to get back to that.
Yep, absolutely agree. That's such good wisdom. Well, Tara, I would love people to find your information, check out your podcast. Where can they find those resources?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Overbooked and Overwhelmed, the book that's coming out on August 5th. If you listen to this before then, you can still pre order a copy of the book. And then afterwards, just, yeah, anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble Christian Book. My podcast is Truth Talks with Tara. And I'm also over on Instagram at Miss Tara Sun. Oh, yeah. And then last thing, I actually recorded the audiobook of Overbooked and Overwhelmed,
Ooh,
which was really
nice.
fun. So, if you're on the go and you need a summer listen or something, I got you.
It's so funny because I listen to audiobooks like that, and if
Yeah.
it's the content as I'm, like, carpooling back and forth, it is such good reminders, like, "Take a breath, Sabbath, the Lord has called you to rest." So I might have to
Yes.
have that on repeat in my car,
Oh,
so thank you
yes.
so much.
That one chapter just over and over again.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, Tara, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on
Thank you,
Embracing Your
Paige.
Season. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, friends, I hope you appreciated the conversation with Tara. I know I certainly did. In fact, I told my producer off air, I was like, I want to be her friend. She's so great. She's awesome. But speaking of my producer, Mike Segovia, you're back on. You have some takeaways, I'm sure, from this conversation. What really stuck out to you?
I do. Well, Paige, I have something, an interesting one here, and something that she said, and I just wanted to kind of talk to you about it. Um, she had made a statement here talking about the children, not running the home,
Oh,
and,
yeah. Yeah.
and I was thinking, man, that could be tough because all my kids are older now and they're out of the house, so I'm an empty nester. But man, Paige, there were schedules, there was dance, there was football, there was Bible study, there was all kinds of things, and so yes, we are the head of the household. But sometimes I felt like, Paige, they run the home,
I
especially
know.
with my son with all of the football
Yeah.
stuff, and your boys are in soccer. And so,
Yep.
Paige, where's the balance there? How do you work with all the schedules with the kids, making sure all the needs are met? And oh yeah, you have a husband too, Paige. So
That's right. All the things, right? And the
yeah, yeah,
roles and the relationships. I know,
yeah.
Mike, I struggle with this as well. It's
Hmm.
one of those things where I want to do it well. I want to steward it well. And it just reminds me that, I mean, it is different seasons. So think about when your kids were babies and you
Hmm.
had older toddlers potentially, and they were jealous of the newborn. And you have to spend more time with the newborn because they literally can't survive without your interaction with
Right,
them.
right.
And so it's always kind of been that way where there's just seasons where a child will potentially get more attention than the other. I think learning that balance, and I know balance is a very hard thing, probably even possible, but learning to choose and prioritize wisely. And you had the same thing with your son because he's talented in football.
Hmm.
My youngest is talented in soccer. And so he does have more opportunities. It doesn't mean that my daughter who does dance doesn't get opportunities, but they
Hmm.
look differently and the time investment looks differently. So, what I think my husband and I have tried to do is we've just been intentional with each kiddo. And we've heard them when they said, I feel like Carter's the favorite child. And then I remind them that no, the dog is the favorite child. Like we shut
Amen.
that down real fast. My dog is my favorite, friends.
Right.
So it's one of those where it's like, I hear you, I validate it, understand how it feels. So how can we come alongside you and help you feel supported, loved, or
Mm.
seen? So we just try to keep those conversations open, but also aware, because they won't always come to you and share that they're in that season of struggle, feeling like they're not seen or loved well. And so I think it's for us, we're just trying to get through it day by day and making sure we're checking in. So asking those questions. Now, when kids are younger, they won't
Hmm.
necessarily be able to articulate that they're feeling left out. So you might see behavioral elements pop up
Mm.
where they're throwing more tantrums or they've regressed in the way that they've behaved, going back to baby like regression. The doctors indicate, and the psychologists and counselors like myself indicate that come alongside that child. And certainly we don't want to indulge the behaviors so that they continue as if it's a positive reinforcement, but we do want to connect with them. We do want to remind them that they have great worth and value and we love them. But at this point, we can't give into all the things that they've asked of us because we have to focus on the other child temporarily in this season. So it's a hard balance, but I do think there's a possibility of being wise in how much we're pouring into each kid as long as we're just intentional. And then let's talk about the mistakes that we've made. Like let's talk about, you're right, I have been spending too much time with this
Mm.
one child doing these certain things. So it is owning the fact that maybe we haven't done it well, but not allowing the child to dictate, but
Yes.
instead allowing us to own what we need to own and then just be intentional about it next time.
Yeah, that's good. Man, Paige, there were so many nuggets from this
Yeah.
conversation. What else
Yeah.
did you come up with from this?
I loved her phraseology of repurposing the time you have.
Hmm.
I know that I was challenged, gosh, it had to been over 7 years ago, where the person that challenged me said that we all have the same amount of time in the day. What are you choosing to do with it? And for
Mm.
me, that was a prompt to get up early. I do
Mm.
not like mornings, or at least I didn't used to. Now my body has adjusted where I have to get up at least an hour, if not 2 hours before my kids do. So that could be 5 o'clock in the morning for me, so that I ensure that I am investing in my time with Jesus. And
Mm.
it's not just checking off the devotional, which, friends, there are seasons where I'm just checking it off the list, and I get that. And I feel like those seasons are not life giving. So instead, I create opportunities where I can have those life giving interactions. And Jesus time is one of those that I know is life giving. Spending time with my friends, and it may not even be face to face time, it could be like Marco Polos. I love Marco
Mm.
Polos because I get to
Yeah.
see my friends. We get to talk about the deep stuff. It's under confidentiality in a way that we're not around in a coffee shop kind of stuff. But because I can't see them all the time. That's life giving. When I
Hmm.
get to have one on one time with my kid, maybe it's like right before they go to bed, that's life giving. So just trying to be wise about using the time that we have and repurposing it to what I prioritize. And I suggested even to my clients, write down your priorities. If you put God first, then how are you making that happen? Make sure you're waking up early, or make sure, even, and this is the next point she talked about, it doesn't just have to be a one time with the Lord. It
Hmm.
can be little interactions throughout the day. So write down your priorities and then fit them into your calendar, into your schedule. And if you mean you have to schedule, because I live by my calendar, if it is not on there,
Yeah.
then it will not
Oh,
happen.
yeah.
So if I have to put a hold on 15 minutes or an hour of my calendar just to make sure that I'm checking in with a friend or I'm making a text message to my kids, like, that's going to be important to me. And so, yeah, just making sure that you repurpose your time really stood out to me. I appreciated that.
Mm, that's really good.
I think another thing that stood out as well is just the chasing achievement. She had said that in the beginning. And I think many people can relate to that in American culture because we are achievement oriented. And I think this should just challenge us to take that step back and say, what do I define as success? Because keep in mind, your kids are watching, you are modeling. And so
Mm.
if you're just filling up your calendar and you're checking off these things that appear good, but aren't that life giving stuff, your kids are going to see that. They're going to see you on your phone all the time. They're going to see the way that you choose to spend your time. And so I think for me, just reminding myself that all the things that I do are awesome, but are they life giving? Do they bring God glory? And
Mm.
are they connecting me to my number one ministry, which is my family? And if it does not come along those lines, then I need to get rid of it in my life. And
Mm.
that might be hard, but I think, again, that's being a good steward. So we need to redefine success in our family life for sure. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, friends, I want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you have any feedback or guests that you would like to hear or see on the show, I would love to hear from you. You can contact me directly at paigeclingenpeel@gmail.com. Next week, we will have another amazing guest, as we always do. So make sure you join in again next time for another edition of Embracing Your Season.